The product I'll be talking about today is a true blast, pun intended, from the past for me. It's a product by the company Creative Labs. Creative Labs has been around as early as the 1980s and has been creating audio-related products typically branded under the SoundBlaster name. This takes me all the way back to the early 90s when I owned my first SoundBlaster card, which was the SoundBlaster 16, probably now found in the Smithsonian, along with Windows 95, which I'm pretty sure was the OS that I was using at the time. Now fast forward to 2024 and Creative is still churning out audio-related products for gaming on PCs, consoles, and mobile devices. The latest in their lineup is the one I'm going to discuss today and is pretty serendipitous for me, considering I never would have thought I would one day be asked to review a product from them. With that, let me now present to all of you the SoundBlaster G8. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I'll be discussing the very versatile SoundBlaster G8 by Creative Labs. Quick disclaimer. Creative Labs did reach out and provide me with the G8 in exchange for all of my thoughts and opinions. And for that I say thank you so very much, as I was humbled by the generous offer and happy to provide my feedback regarding this device. The G8 does retail in for $149.99 and boasts quite a few different features. One of these standout features is the ability to plug in two different USB-C driven devices simultaneously to experience a mixing of audio sources uncommon to most devices in this category. This high-res gaming DAC is powered by a Cirrus Logic CS43198 chip that features up to 32-bit and 384 kHz of playback, a dedicated discrete headphone amp that provides individual power per channel that has a rated dynamic range of 130 dB, scout mode, as well as plenty of other software unlocked options when you download and utilize the Creative app on your PC. Before we dive into the entire feature set, let's take a closer look at the G8. Hey guys, really quick interruption here to remind you that if you haven't done so already, please do consider subscribing to the channel and don't forget to like the videos if you do like them. Also, I do have a Patreon. If you'd like to join and support me there, I do have a Telegram chat for my Patreon members, so you can get sneak peeks on videos and projects and things that I might be working on. So please consider doing that, as I use that to also support the growth of this channel. All right, guys, with that, I will let you get back to the video. First of all, when you open the box of the SoundBlaster G8, you will receive the G8, two USB-C cables that are just under 5 feet of length each, and a fold-out manual and quick start guide that really leaves a lot to be desired. For a unit that has as many connectivity options as the G8, I really wish they would have thought out this manual as more of a illustrated booklet, or maybe just a QR code to head to their site for more information. I literally laughed out loud as I started to unfold and said, nope, not gonna do it. So to save some of you the same pain and anguish, I will directly link where you can find plenty of instructions and guides on this amp in the description of the video. Seriously, this knowledge base for the G8 is invaluable in my opinion, and I utilize quite a few tips and tricks from it, so you're welcome. Looking at the build and aesthetic of the G8, I'll start by saying it is made up entirely of plastic. It is overall a fairly solid plastic that has a good feel to the touch. The top of the amp isn't too squishy, which is great, so it has sturdiness as well. The sides are gray and the top and bottom are all in black. All of the buttons and knobs are plastic but have a good tactile feel to them. Bottom of the amp has these long rubberized pads on the front and back of the amp, so you won't find it sliding around on your desk. It's also elevated in the back to make things easier to read while sitting on your desk. The game mix knob on the left is tight and has a good stop in the middle to easily keep it in the center position when needed. The giant volume knob is smooth enough when turning, but not quite as tight as the game mix is. You'll see the SoundBlaster logo on the left side that will light up in white when the G8 is on. For the most part, I find the build to be pretty dang good. especially for the price this is coming in at. The only slight concern I have is on the coating on the plastic. It does make me wonder if this type of coating will chip or scratch too easily. Now for that, I definitely recommend to keep a microfiber cloth nearby and don't use anything abrasive to wipe down the unit. Now I say wipe down because fingerprints will show up on either of the knobs as they are a glossy coating on both. Starting out on the back of the G8, and you will see quite an array of connectivity options. On the far left is an HDMI ARC input. This can be used for game audio when in the game voice mix, so think of things like console connections such as a PS5. I do want to note, however, that this does not support eARC. I feel like this is a bit of a miss considering that ARC is a dated technology compared to eARC being more of the current trend for higher decoding. Then you'll notice both USB-C inputs. The USB-C 1 input also has the letters DC next to it. That is because the USB-C 1 is to support power to the unit. So plugging this straight into a PC will not only power the G8, but also carry your sound from the PC to this input. You could also use USB-C 1 to plug into a standard 5-volt USB-C power adapter if you only want to use this port to power the G8. This is a nice touch for those wanting to use this for more portability use cases. Now, one negative comment I will make on this is the lack of a dedicated power switch. When you have the USB-C 1 plugged into a PC or power adapter, the power to the unit is on. So there is no way to turn it off without unplugging or simply shutting down the PC it is plugged into. Then you have the USB-C 2 input. USB-C 2 will not accept any power to the unit. This is strictly to carry audio, which is the kind you hear or the microphone that you're outputting when you want to use this in a mixing type scenario in the game voice mix. For instance, you could use USB-C 1 for the power from a standard power adapter, then USB-C 2 for your gaming sound, then pair that up with either HDMI or optical in for another mixing option. Pretty dope, right? Well, I thought so. Under both USB-C inputs, you will find the optical out or optical in. Again, you can use this simultaneously to output audio with line out for a stereo mix situation. Just note that volume can only be adjusted on the output device when you use digital out. The optical in does support up to 32 bit rate and 192 kilohertz of sample rate. Next up are the line out and line in ports. Both are your standard 3.5 port connections. Line out can be used to plug into active speakers. Line in can be connected up to tablets and mobile devices if you choose to do so. Lastly, above the row of ports, you will see two switches. Just as they look, you switch either optical in or ARC depending on the input you are choosing to go with. Then you'll see a low gain and high gain switch. Now I've reached out to Creative to find out how much of a dB boost we get from the gain, but all I've been able to find is a recommendation of using low gain for headphones that are 8 to 149 ohms and high gain for 150 to 600 ohms of impedance. Pretty generic standard, but at least a good practice to try out for yourself. Now I think it's important to note you won't do any damage by using either gain mode for any output impedance. Just make sure to keep the volume at 0 before doing so, and then see how things sound to your ears to determine the right setting as you turn up the volume. First thing on the front of the amp would be the game voice mix knob, or the smaller knob that is on the left. Turn it to the right for more voice volume or to the left for more game volume. Simple in design, but an absolute game changer, in my opinion, for total control of your volume while gaming without the need to digitally mess with this in any kind of software. Then we see the giant playback volume knob. Turn it to the right, things go loud. Turn it to the left, things go soft. Funny as it may sound, or not, I should note that this only controls volume from headphone or headset out and line out. So another quick note in the volume here is I did find a decent gain boost that seems to happen when the notch on the volume hits around the V of the VOL on the unit. I've seen this on other amps, so I wouldn't worry too much on how this functions, but important enough to notate. All right, the bottom row of ports starts with the microphone. This is a 3-pole 3.5mm port that also supports microphone monitoring. This will take priority over a headset's microphone, just in case you happen to use two at the same time. It's also a single mono-channel port. Then we see the headphone or headset port. This will work with a 4-pole 3.5 connector and means that it is a CTIA standard that carries mic and headphone sound at once. So no need for a splitter if you just have a single connection. This will not output audio simultaneously with line out or optical out, just in case you were looking for that option. You'll notice a light indicator next to the ports. This is a Dolby audio decoder indicator when using Dolby through the HDMI or optical in ports. You cannot get Dolby through the USB connections, so please notate that. Now we move on to the 3 buttons on the unit. The SBX button stands for Sound Blaster Effects. You can toggle this between the EQ, Scout mode, and no effects at all. The sound card will automatically remember the last audio effect that was set up for when you use this connected to a console and not your PC. So messing around in the Creative app to find your preferred profile is something I recommend doing first before using this outside of your PC. Solid blue on this button indicates Scout mode, where the white will indicate the EQ effects. Mode button is up next. This can toggle to a direct mode option. That means that all software effects will be turned off and you will be listening to your gear exactly how it sounds in its natural state. Purists will love this mode the most. Turning on direct mode will be indicated by a green LED, and then the SBX will automatically turn off if it was lit up. Unfortunately, direct mode only works when connected through a PC through USB 1. Kind of a bummer, but maybe that's just me. Last up is the HP SPK button, or headphone/speaker toggle. Just as it sounds, it will toggle whether you want to listen to headphones or the speakers. No LED means it's working in line out mode for speakers, whereas a white LED means you're listening to your headphones or headset or IEMs, or you get it. Since this is such a versatile product, I definitely recommend installing and using the Creative app. So starting with the main page, you'll see different tiles that you can click onto to go into. What's nice is that you can edit out different tiles if you won't find yourself using all of them. It's something I personally recommend doing after you do some tinkering of your own because, out of sight, out of mind. Or this may overwhelm and blow your mind messing with every option. So yeah, sound mode will take you into all different kinds of effects that you can have activated for your sound. Surround sound, crystallizer, and dialogue plus to name a few. There's even the ability to add a crossover to your bass, then an option to use different decoder settings as well. Direct mode is simply the physical button, just using in the software instead. Scout mode lets you go in and assign a hotkey to it, which is handy. Scout mode, for those who don't know, is considered by some to be almost like a cheat code for sound. This enhances audio for things like footsteps or speech and movement. Fun to try, but you still need to, aim if you want to get good. Crystal Voice has many different options to digitally enhance your voice for communications. Now this can conflict with other voice enhancements used in apps like, say, Discord, so just be cautious and have an understanding of when to utilize this. Google is your friend here. Decoder goes hand in hand with Dolby when that is being utilized and controls the dynamic range of things. Again, something to tinker with. Lastly, and probably most importantly, is the EQ. This software uses a 10-band EQ system that, in my opinion, is very good. It has a ton of different presets that could even be used for a specific game or game genre. There are also settings for music and genres of music, movies, you name it. Speaking of you name it, you can do that too. You can customize your own EQ, then name them to quickly pull them up on your own setting. One size definitely does not fit all for EQ, so I do recommend playing around with this and see which one you like. Simply hitting game mode may not be enough, depending on the sound profile of the headphone or the speaker that you're using. Now on the left side, you can toggle to the playback simply to set up the bitrate and sample rate of your devices. My personal pro tip here is not to simply set it at the highest level because highest does not always mean best. In fact, I found a few games in my past that didn't like a bitrate over 192 kilohertz. So if you're asking me, I'd set this to 24,192 and leave it be. Still, if you want to unlock a higher refresh rate for music listening and streaming, then by all means play around with it. The recording tab is just like playback for, recording. Once again, my recommendation is not to set this as high as it can go. Most applications and mixers won't utilize more than 24-bit and 48 kilohertz bitrate, so that's what I set mine at for a set it and forget it situation. Still, play around with this and see for yourself, or hear for yourself. Lastly is settings for, Windows startup, drivers, firmware, and software updates. Okay, we are finally going to talk about the sound quality you can expect from the G8. It is important to know that I've been using this device for almost 2 months. In that time, I've used direct mode, EQ profiles, and tried out different combinations of PC, mobile, and consoles like my Nintendo Switch plugged in. I've used low impedance headphones such as my Meze 99 Classics or the newly launched 105 AER with the boom mic as a headset. Different IEMs such as the Meze Alba, the Audio Hype 4, or a great budget option, the OG Soundnote Zero. I've used higher impedance such as my Sennheiser 560S and even my ZMFs. I also have the RU Organic that I tried out to see how this handles planar magnetic drivers. What I've found through all of this is that for the most part, this amp will drive a very high percentage of headphones and headsets on the market. I did not find myself using high gain with even my higher impedance headphones as advised earlier. I would sample both if I were you, but as long as you have enough volume in low and a good dynamic range, I'd keep it at that setting and don't worry about it. I did decide to use some very sensitive IEMs with low impedance that I have on hand just to see how the noise floor is, and what I found is pretty much what I would expect. I did pick up a bit of noise, but it's also not bad at all for my tolerance. In direct mode, I found the G8 to provide a pretty clean output of sound. Nothing seemed overly done in the bass department or lacking for that matter either. I do think this leans a bit bright at times and notice so on some of my brighter headphones, such as the Organic. The good news is that it isn't harsh. I find things to roll off a bit smoother on the high end, so using headphones like some of the Beyerdynamic offerings may not stab your ears quite as direct. This is something that I believe the Cirrus Logic DAC chip to be assisting with. I think that also lends to a nice representation of staging when paired up with headphones that provide that quality to them. So this is where utilizing the software EQ is an absolute must depending on what your preferences or tolerances are for audio so that you can further dial things in. When flipping on the EQ, games can become more lively and engaging. You can tinker to your heart's content with footsteps when you truly want to get into the competition. Or you can jack up some bass when you want to hear those explosions to become the focus of excitement. I used the Diablo 4 EQ mode, for instance, and it really did make the game become more alive for my enjoyment of it. I even tried out that profile while playing Path of Exile 2 and found it to provide the extra bit of stimulus needed for my audio enjoyment. If it's RPGs with voiceovers, you can mess around with Crystallizer and Dialogue Plus settings to pull you into the story. This is something I did during a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 as I found myself role-playing along with the story. So don't judge me. Then I had to try out Scout mode while playing some Call of Duty. It truly does enhance movements and footsteps of those around you, though in the end, it doesn't detect a mine that happens to be sitting on some steps. Yeah, I suck. I also found myself impressed when I had the G8 plugged into my PC on USB 1 and my phone through USB 2. I was then able to answer a call while I was in a game and then simply turn the gaming mix dial so I could hear my conversation better. It's a feature I never thought I wanted, but one that I now don't want to go without now that I've experienced it. I mean, we've all been there when the phones rang and you have to decide between pausing the game or taking certain death to talk to your friends or your mom. Sorry, Mom. Speaking of having a conversation, again with the puns, I can tell you that the mic audio seems effortless and clean. Using my Meze boom mic didn't result in any issues or concerns, and that was set at the 2448 for reference. Another fun scenario was playing Tidal through my phone while gaming on my PC. I was able to balance my personal music with the in-game volume to create my own atmosphere instead of the in-game music. The same could be said for using this on a console or any mobile device to cater to your needs as well. Again, it's versatile as hell. I know there have been quite a few questions already from those who own the G6 as to whether this is an upgrade. Even though I don't have the G6, I've heard from enough to hopefully answer a few things. First off, you will get more connectivity options out of the G8. The G8 also ditches the dated micro USB and is the more current gen friendly of the two. The dual USB-C option is really where it's at. If it's a feature you could do without and already have the G6, then I'd say you're probably fine, as most of the other specifications seem to line up between the two units, and I obviously cannot comment on the sound differences since I don't have the G6 on hand. Now I do have another gaming DAC amp on hand that was interesting to compare this to. The unit I am referring to is the Schiit Gunnr. Now the Gunnr is a step up in price by about $100 when you consider shipping. There is also not any software or digital EQ available on the Gunnr. You won't get the dual USB option like the G8 either. Where the Gunnr separates itself comes down to the hardware, more specifically, power. The Gunnr can output a whopping 2 watts of power at 16 ohms and still over 1 watt at the standard 32. I also get more of a weighted experience with the Gunnr when it comes to a bit of a thumpier bass response and livelier experience. There are some interesting options as well on the Gunnr to dial in presence and soundstage through the EQ dials. My simple way of looking at this comparison is that the Gunnr is more for an audio enthusiast that is wanting to game as well, whereas the G8 is a gamer mindset first and audio enthusiast second type unit. Neither unit is bad in my opinion, just different use case scenarios. I will once again give a nod to the G8, however, as that smoother presentation in the high end does help with those more sensitive to it. The Gunnr will get a bit stabbier, but also thumpier, so call it a trade-off. Also surprisingly is even though the power output is a mystery for the G8, I didn't feel like it was lacking behind the Gunnr for harder to drive headphones that I have on hand. I mean, what sort of voodoo is this, Creative? It's the good kind, I think. In conclusion, I think Creative has really stepped up their game by offering something different for gamers that care about sound. Now that's not to say I didn't find a few issues here or there with the G8, such as lack of the eARC for HDMI, no on-off switch for the unit, and the somewhat mystery behind just how much power this amp can provide. To be fair though, I didn't have any issues powering any of my headphones I paired up with this amp, which is fantastic. Also, I should mention that I did have occasional odd problems with audio that I'm pretty certain was due to software conflicts of the Creative app. Things like sudden volume spike without touching the dial, or just no audio at all that became fixed by a simple restart. Thankfully, these issues were not plentiful, but still happened due to either the software or my PC. This is something I am accustomed to experiencing given my long history with SoundBlaster products, and that the software doesn't always behave well with other applications. This is not isolated alone just to Creative, so please understand that this is just some caution you'll need to take when using software applications, especially on Windows PCs. Right, Windows 8? I don't miss those years at all. That's for damn sure. Overall, I'm very happy with the SoundBlaster G8 and believe this to be one heck of a versatile device that can only enhance your gaming experiences. Now, it should go without saying, but the same goes for music lovers as well. The direct mode gives you the purest of audio, but then kicking on some software EQ, and suddenly your favorite genres of music can gain some liveliness to them as well. The dual USB options presents an advantage I never knew I was missing out on until I experienced it for myself. I can only hope that Creative will continue to build on this success and possibly offer a product down the road with more pro audio solutions or equipment, more power, balanced options, something of that nature. Now, as I wrap this up, I'd love to know in the comments down below what products you use for your gaming audio. How much stock do you put into the software features? And is the dual USB something too intriguing to pass up? Also, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to further support the growth of the channel. I would like to thank each and every one of you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.